What if you had a really powerful tool for teaching the Common Core standards in language arts, like reading literature, reading information text, process writing, and vocabulary? Or what about for teaching content standards like social studies and science or math? Here's a sample fifth grade standard from the Common Core for summarizing main ideas and details. It's fifth grade standard, number 2. Determine 2 or more main ideas of a text and explain how they're supported by key details, and then summarize the text. Now, webs are really great tools for teaching a standard like this, and they can be very effective for depicting main ideas and details. But what if you had access to tools that were really even better? For an example, topic is about, what's a main idea, supporting details. It's another main idea, supporting details. And down at the bottom, so what? What's important to understand about this? What if the tool were in color? Now here's a web, Titanic lessons from a disaster, that has 3 main ideas and various supporting points and so forth. Now, what I'm going to share with you next is the exact same information, word for word, that's depicted on a smart visual from Make Sense Strategies. So here's the web. Here's the identical information here. What if you were a student? Which would you rather have? What if they work for math? Or science, or literature? Here's a 4th grade standard comparing themes and event patterns. Compare and contrast the treatment of similar themes and topics. For example, the opposition of good and evil and patterns of events like the quest in stories, myths, and traditional literature from different cultures. Now, VINs, because it's a comparison, are really great tools for teaching a standard like this. Now here's an example of a basic VIN that's comparing a bald eagle with a red-tailed hawk, and of course this looks at similarities and differences. And so VINs can be very effective tools for making comparisons. But what if you had tools that were actually enhanced with what are called discipline-specific prompts? So for an example, you started with food, habitat, color, and nests, and then you made comparisons based on those various subtopics. You tend to get a lot more information, and the information seems to be a lot more clear when you add the subtopics. So what if you were a student? Which would you rather have? VINs without the subtopics or VINs with them? What if the tool were interactive? In other words, you could open up one of these graphics on your computer, and then you can click and type on the various spaces on the graphic organizer and then save the work to folders. What if you could use them with smart boards and other monitors that are mounted so that all students can see the work as it's being developed? What if the tool could be simultaneously used as a wiki as multiple students add information to it? What if you had similar tools for other information structures that are targeted by the Common Core standards, like cause and effect? And so here's an example of one for literature. Obviously this is a little kid example, but character, title, and the story, description of the character at the beginning, what caused the character to change, description of the character at the end of the story. Here's an example. Here's one a little more sophisticated for intermediate grades, Frederick Douglass and the Fight for Freedom. This caused this. Here's an example of one for high school in sequence. Before, what happened before the event, then what caused it, what happened during it, and what happened after it, and as in the age of exploration. And why the event happened. Here's an example of a sequence that shows the basic steps for geometry, solving geometry word problems. What if you had access to over 500 of these tools? What if you had leveled versions of the tools so they could be scaffolded across the grade level? For an example, hierarchic, you have one main idea, two main ideas, 3, 4, 6, 8, and so forth. Or if you had leveled versions for compare and contrast, cause and effect, linear sequence, and cycles. So in other words, they can get increasingly more sophisticated so you can differentiate their use depending on the needs of different students within the same classroom. What if the prompts were added that focused on Common Core comprehension strategies, like asking and answering questions? So for example, here's one from 2nd grade. Ask and answer such questions as who, what, when, where, and why, and how to demonstrate understanding of key details in text. And so here's an example of how that might look. So you have a character, draw a picture of the character, make up a question, and then answer to your question, and then what you liked or did not like about the character. Or drawing inferences. Here's a 4th grade standard. Refer to details and examples in a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences about the text. And so in this case, what we're doing is recasting inferences a little bit differently, and that is the author never tells the whole story. You have to use your own background knowledge or experiences to make guesses or draw conclusions about parts of the story that's not explained by the author. Those are called inferences. So in this case, describe a character, draw a picture, describe some things about the character that might be true, but the author didn't tell. Of course, there are much more sophisticated versions of those as you move up in the grade levels. What if there were vocabulary versions of the tool? So here's an example of a very simple one. We have a new word. What are the key features in the definition of the new word, and what are non-features, what it is and what it's not, and draw a picture. So mammals, live birth, warm-blooded, mother nurses young, has hair, fur. Mammals are not hatched from an egg, they're not cold-blooded, they don't have scales. Here's one slightly more sophisticated, where over here you have, the term, what would be the definition of the term, what's a knowledge connection? What's this make you think of? And then draw a picture. Here's one for science. So what if you could import pictures? Or links to videos? What if these kinds of tools were strongly endorsed by leading professional organizations with language literacy, like the International Reading Association, or the National Council for Teachers of English, or the National Association of School Psychologists, or by professional organizations concerned with teaching students with disabilities, like Council for Exceptional Children, or the International Council for Learning Disabilities, or by professional organizations concerned with teaching students learning English, like TESOL. What if the tools were accompanied by scaffolded instructional routines designed to maximize student engagement, like before routines for using the tools at the beginning of the lesson to do things like assess what students already know, or activate background knowledge, or pre-teach vocabulary, or provide advanced organizers, or during routines for using the tools during the heart of a lesson to teach things like reading comprehension strategies, process writing strategies, and vocabulary, content area subjects like social studies and science, and math concepts. Or after instructional routines for using the tools to review a lesson or to pose essential questions. What if you had hundreds of examples of how teachers have used these tools, in particular teachers in Alabama? What if there was strong evidence that use of the tools had significant increases on students' test scores, including test scores of students with learning disabilities? What if the tools were very affordable, like free to Alabama public school teachers? What if teachers were integrating the smart visuals across the curriculum and across all grade levels? So what we're going to be focusing on is a thing called Make Sense Strategies Toolkit, and they're really not your parents' graphic organizers.